Vibe check. Posted by you/MagicDook. Tour manager thinks he knows better than the technical staff for a big-name comedian, probably cost his job. So this happened quite a few years ago. I used to work as a senior technician for a large entertainment venue, around 2,000 standing capacity. Most of the time we would have private events etc., but this particular day a very well-known comedian was booked to do an hour at the venue. Before the show I was expected to meet with his tour manager, discuss his needs, set up stuff etc. He arrives and immediately sets the tone. Personally I think they thought they were too big to play our venue, but they clearly didn't know what they got into. Dave won't use any of your crappy mics, he tours with his own sound system. Sure, when is it getting here? I've got it with me, the manager said in the most condescending tone ever. He proceeded to pull out a self-contained speaker system, no bigger than a suitcase. There was no way it was going to fill the first 2 rows of tables, never mind the rest of the venue, which would be at capacity that night. No problem, I can give you a tie line so you can use our speakers. That's not acceptable. Dave will only use our speakers and mic. To cut a long story short, I spent about 15 minutes arguing with the guy who was belligerent and refused to acknowledge that his crappy system on its own wouldn't fill the venue, and there was no way I could let them do it, without support from us. I explained he would have full control over the sound, my gear was there just to amplify it, I wouldn't need to touch the desk. This still wasn't good enough for him and he threatened to pull Dave from the show. Edit for clarity, he was very aggressive and condescending. At a few points he tried to claim I didn't know what I was doing, and that I shouldn't be employed by the company as I was clueless, no matter how much I explained the science etc. He tried to scare me into doing what he wanted by threatening to pull the show. There was no need for this, it was him being stubborn and trying to pull power, thinking I would back down and let him cause serious complaints for the venue because of his poor tech knowledge. He eventually backed down when I told him fine, I'd call the venue manager and explain the situation, I'd get a night off and he wouldn't get paid. Much rather that than hundreds of complaints and refunds. He backed down and we set up for the show. But he was still a jerk and the act was no better. They clearly thought they were better than us and it showed. The act even walked around backstage in his boxers into different people's dressing rooms without knocking etc. Between them they both managed to annoy everyone. I had enough. The tour manager had set up a little sound desk at the side of the stage for him to use for Dave's microphone. He was standing there throughout the show mixing his mic. Where he put himself meant he couldn't hear how it sounded, but could be seen by everyone. My lighting OP and I were at the back of the room a few hundred feet away and hatched our plan. The first few minutes of the show were fine until the tour manager moved away from his desk to listen. As he walked away for some strange reason Dave's mic would feedback. He would run back to the desk, try to correct it, but it would solve itself. A couple of minutes later he would walk away and it would start to get that horrible feedback again. Nothing that the audience would notice too much, but Dave and his tour manager certainly did. The tour manager was puzzled. He couldn't understand why this was happening and Dave was getting more and more irate, glaring at his manager throughout the act. What they didn't know was that I was watching the manager, and every time he stepped away I turned up the high frequencies on my desk causing the feedback. As he got to the desk I would correct it and get rid of the feedback myself. Rinse and repeat. He got so annoyed he came to the back of the venue, barged into our control box and looked at my desk, which of course was set naturally as we had discussed. Have you touched your desk? No mate, actually I did once. Seemed like you were struggling with feedback so I took a bit of the top out. He walked away sheepishly back to his desk, about halfway there the mic started feeding back again, this time quite aggressively. He had to run the last 50 foot or so which only drew more attention to him, especially from Dave the comedian. On his way out the venue I heard the tour manager being chewed out by Dave, about how incompetent he was. Few years later I meet Dave at another venue I'm working at. Turns out he's a decent enough guy. Didn't mention the revenge I did on the tour manager, but told him about the gig. Turns out it was one of the last times he used that manager, one of the reasons being how bad that gig was. TLDR tour manager thinks he can berate staff and talk down to them, so crew cause feedback during the show so it makes the manager look bad. Turns out to be one of the reasons why he loses a job. Edit, as per the rules here, all names are fake including Dave the comedian. Please don't try and guess who they are. I won't say who out of professional courtesy and abiding by the sub rules. No double bluffs, just name picked at random. Posted by u/lil_smd_19. My teacher flooded his neighbor's house with sewage so his house wouldn't be flooded with sewage. So this is a story my carpentry teacher told us the other day. So my teacher lives in a 3-story house not including the basement, and up the street is some condos. In one of the condos is a family with children. One day my teacher's wife goes into their basement to do laundry. She smelled dirty diapers. I guess dirty diapers have a distinct smell. She recognized this isn't normal and called my teacher explaining that it smelled like dirty diapers. Their kids are all grown up so obviously it wasn't coming from them. My teacher thought about it and speculated someone up the street was flushing dirty diapers down their toilet. He said to his wife, "Don't flush the toilet, don't use the washer, don't use the sink." He proceeds to call the person that put in the sewer system of his house. They're friends so he was willing to help him out. What the guy told him to do was plug every drain in his house with some sort of drain plug they sell at home improvement stores for this kind of reason. He even had to take his toilets off and plug the drain on them all except for his 3rd floor, wait for it. Once he did that according to his friend's instructions, go to the 3rd floor and flush every toilet. He said when he did this it was so clogged up in the pipes, water started coming from the drain of his bathroom and he had to plug it up. Nothing was happening until he just heard this giant whoosh noise in his pipes. A couple minutes later fire trucks were showing up to the condos up the street and he knew it worked. The reason why this happened was since his dumb-ass neighbors were flushing diapers down the toilet. The way the sewer system works is that it goes downstream of elevation. So coming from the condos down the street, then it comes off at an intersection and goes to his house. The diapers were caught at that intersection and actually going into his house, just the pipes luckily, unless they didn't take the right action. So by plugging all of the drains except the 3rd floor, the liquid would need more pressure to travel up to the 3rd floor, or by flushing all of the toilets and introducing a lot of pressure into the system, because it's at a higher elevation on the 3rd floor, it shot all of the clogged up sewage back upstream. Even though it's going upstream, remember pressure, all of his drains were plugged including the sewage system going down the street, so there's only one way to go, to the neighbor's house. And into their house LMAO. That's why you don't flush diapers down the toilet, they expand. Actually don't flush anything other than what should go down there. Your house could just be covered in shit next time because your neighbor knows what he/she's doing. Posted by u/bitchitties. Had my half-brother removed from the will after he stole money from our father with Alzheimer's. Shortly after my father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, my formerly estranged half-brother quit his job and moved in to help take care of my dad. Though there really wasn't enough money, it was agreed to pay him around $300 a week to make up for his missing income. During this time, my half-brother abruptly acquired durable power of attorney and usurped medical and financial. My mother and father had separate financial lives, decisions. Several documents relating to my dad's pension, which were now my half-brother's responsibility, were not turned in on time, resulting in my dad missing out on a one-time payout of $8,000 and lowering his pension payout by $300/mo. My half-brother them cleaned out my dad's remaining savings, about $3,000, not discover until about a month later. 6 days later, our father hung himself in the basement. My dad left all of his insurance money and belongings to my mother. Us children were left with only sentimental items. My half-brother was visibly upset and shaking when the will was read. He acknowledged that my mother was receiving everything and left. About a month later we discovered the missing money. Though he broke no laws because he had power of attorney, we insisted he pay it back, even offered to let him make payments over a 2-year period. He refused and we have been no contact for 2 years now. Little did he know that he was in my mom's, his stepmother's, will. He would receive half of what is currently a $250,000 estate. I suggested to my mother that she remove him from the will. She did and I am now the sole beneficiary. He stole $3,000 now only to lose out on $125,000 later. TLDR. Half-brother stole $3,000 from sick father only to be removed from the will and miss out on $125,000 later.